The sound of laughter echoed through the big restaurant that night, and every head turned to look at the girl carrying a tray with only one hand. Her name was Anna Carter, and she was just 25 years old. But life had already tested her more than most people ever knew. Her right hand was tied in a rough splint, made from cloth and wood, after she slipped in the kitchen weeks ago and fractured her bones. But she never stopped working because her mother was sick in the hospital and bills kept piling higher every day. Now she stood in front of the richest guests in the city, her left hand trembling as she tried to keep the glasses from spilling. One man at the table leaned back in his chair and smirked at her like she was part of some cruel show, and he said with a loud, mocking voice, "What can a crippled waitress do besides spill drinks?" The whole table laughed, and the sound cut through Anna like a knife. The chandeliers above sparkled like they too were laughing, and the golden walls of the restaurant reflected the cruel faces of the guests. The manager, named Paul, stood near the bar, his arms crossed and his scowl deep. He looked ready to fire her if she made the smallest mistake. Every step Anna took across the polished floor felt heavy, like she was walking on a thin rope stretched above a pit of shame. Her shoes were cheap. Her white shirt was clean but frayed at the cuffs, and she looked like she did not belong in a place so expensive that the menus did not even list prices. The laughter grew louder as she reached the table of 6, all dressed like they were actors in a show about wealth. One woman with red lipstick and a diamond necklace raised her hand and snapped her fingers, calling her sweetie. "Can you hurry with the water, or is that too hard for you?" Her friends burst into another round of laughter, enjoying every second of Anna's struggle. Anna lowered her head slightly, her face calm and her eyes sharp with focus, and she carefully placed each glass of water in front of them one by one, her left hand steady, though her fingers shook from the weight. Not a single drop spilled, yet the mockery continued, like the cruelty itself was the entertainment of the evening. At another table, a man whispered loud enough for Anna to hear, "She is going to drop it, clumsy little thing." Another guest muttered, "She does not belong here, and she makes the whole place look cheap." The waiter named Derek, who always wore too much cologne, walked past and sneered, only sticking around because she is desperate. And the words stung. Even though Anna kept her eyes down, her jaw tightened, but she stayed silent because she knew arguing would mean losing her job, and she could not risk that with her mother lying weak in a hospital bed waiting for medicine Anna could barely afford. The room felt like a cage full of eyes watching her stumble, waiting for her to fail. Every laugh, every cruel whisper added weight to the tray she carried, yet she kept moving, her steps steady, her back straight, her head slightly bowed. Nobody cared about the pain running from her wrist to her elbow. Nobody cared that the splint was fraying or that she had not been able to buy new medicine for herself. To them, she was not a person. She was just a story to laugh at. But in the corner of the restaurant sat a man in a plain gray suit, eating alone and watching everything with calm, sharp eyes. He looked ordinary. Nothing about him stood out yet. He was not ordinary at all. His name was Richard Hale, and he was the secret owner of the restaurant chain, including this very place, though nobody in the staff knew. For weeks he had been coming here, sitting quietly in the shadows, blending in like any other guest. But tonight, as he watched Anna Carter struggle and endure insult after insult, something inside him stirred. He saw the way she turned her whole body to balance the tray with one hand, her movements careful but graceful like a dance. He noticed how her eyes, though tired, held a fire, a strength most people ignored because they were too busy laughing at her pain. Richard leaned back in his chair, his fork resting on the plate untouched. His lips pressed together as he studied the young waitress who kept serving with dignity, even when the world around her treated her like dirt. Every insult was a stone thrown at her, yet she did not break. Every laugh was a knife against her pride, yet she did not fight back. Instead, she kept showing up table after tray after tray, her silence louder than any words. The night stretched on like a cruel game, and Anna carried the weight of more than just plates. She carried the weight of her mother's life, the weight of poverty, and the weight of every cruel voice telling her she was nothing. And still she did not fall. The guests thought she was weak. The staff thought she was slow. The manager thought she was a mistake. But in the quiet corner, Richard saw something different. He saw a strength that could not be taught, a dignity that could not be bought, and a story that was not finished. Yet, Anna Carter was more than a waitress with one hand, and before the night was over, the truth about her would shock everyone inside that glittering, cruel restaurant. The night did not grow kinder. As Anna moved across the glittering room, her left hand gripping the tray tight, while her right hand hung useless in the rough splint, tied with old cloth and wood. She had survived the first round of laughter, but the cruel games were only beginning, and each table seemed ready to test how much she could endure. At the far side of the room, a man in a shiny suit raised his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Hey, sweetheart, we need a bottle of the 96. Chateau Lafite, you do know what that is, right?" His friends chuckled as if sharing a private joke, their watches shining under the chandelier light and their smirks daring her to fail. Anna did not flinch. She nodded once, her face calm like a mask, and walked toward the wine cellar with quiet steps. The heavy bottle pressed cold against her palm as she carried it back, balancing it with her single working hand, her movements slow but precise. She set the bottle on the table and began to open it, the corkscrew twisting with steady force, though her arm trembled from the effort. The man leaned forward, his voice dripping with mock pity. "Careful with that bottle, little girl. It is worth more than your whole year of pay." The others laughed. Again, the sound sharp like knives in the air. But Anna kept her focus. She poured with the grace of training she never spoke of, and when the wine touched the glass, not a single drop was spilled. When she finished, she lifted her chin just enough and spoke softly but clear. "This is a Bordeaux, 2005 with strong oak finish." The laughter died suddenly, their smirks faltered, and their eyes flickered with surprise. They had expected clumsiness, not knowledge. They had expected failure, not elegance. The silence around the table lasted only a moment before whispers spread across the room and heads turned as if trying to decide who this broken waitress really was in the corner. Richard Hale leaned forward, his sharp eyes narrowing, and his lips moved in a whisper only he could hear. "Where were you trained?" For he knew that knowledge did not come from nowhere. It came from study. It came from discipline. It came from pride. And he recognized the touch of someone who had once held a future far greater than this. But the guests were not finished with their cruelty. A woman in a silk scarf caught Anna's arm as she passed, her smile wide, but her eyes cold honey. "You really should get that hand fixed," she said, her voice loud enough. "For other tables to hear it is distracting. It makes people uncomfortable. Maybe you should find a job where you are not seen." The woman tilted her head as if giving kind advice, but the words were sharpened like hidden blades. Anna stood still for a heartbeat, her tray balanced on her trembling left hand. Then she answered softly, "I am here to work, ma'am," and she pulled her arm free and walked away, steady and quiet. The woman blinked, taken aback, her smile faltering as if she had been the one slapped instead. Richard saw this too, his fingers tapping slowly on the wooden table. He nodded just slightly, for he had seen something most people missed. Anna's quiet defiance spoke louder than shouting. Her calm words cut deeper than insults, and it left the cruel guests unsettled. Meanwhile, the staff began to add their voices to the growing storm. The waiter named Derek passed by again, his cologne leaving a trail, and his voice sharp enough for Anna to hear. "She is embarrassing the whole place, only sticks around because she is desperate." A busboy named Tommy laughed with another worker, whispering, "Bet she has a sob story for that hand. Probably wants us all to feel sorry for her." Their words floated in the air like smoke choking the space around her, yet Anna did not stop. Her tray moved like an extension of her arm, her face steady, though her eyes carried the weight of every insult. The manager Paul watched from near the bar, his scowl growing deeper each time a guest whispered, or a laugh rose across the tables. To him, Anna was a stain on the polished surface of the restaurant, a girl who refused to quit even when she clearly did not belong. When she walked past him, he caught her with sharp words. "Anna, I am getting complaints. You are too slow, too clumsy. You are making us look bad. One more mistake, and you are done." Her voice was soft but steady. "I am doing my best, sir." Paul leaned closer, his breath sharp with coffee. "Your best is not good enough. Remember that." Anna bowed, her head just slightly not in defeat but in focus, and she walked on. The night pressed heavier now, like the air itself wanted her to give in. Every table had something to say. Every laugh grew louder. Every whisper turned into cruel music. A woman, in a sequin dress, snapped her fingers. "Girl, you are in the way. Stand somewhere else." A man with a velvet jacket leaned to his friend. "Why let people like her work here?" She drags down the whole vibe. Their laughter stung like sparks, but Anna carried. On slow, steady, her steps deliberate as if each one was a promise to herself, in the corner. Richard's jaw tightened as he listened and watched his plate still untouched. He had seen many workers crumble under less pressure, but this girl did not. "Break!" She did not lash out, she did not cry. She simply kept showing up, her silence heavier than their noise. By now the restaurant was alive with cruelty, like a stage where Anna was forced to play the fool. But Richard saw the truth beneath the act, and he leaned back, whispering again to himself, "She is not weak. She is something else." And though the guests laughed louder, though the staff whispered sharper, though the manager threatened harder, Anna kept moving, carrying more than just a tray. She carried her pride, her pain, her love for her mother, and a quiet strength that none of them could understand. The night pressed heavier like storm clouds gathering above, and the restaurant turned into a stage where cruelty was the main performance, and Anna Carter was forced to play the role that no one wanted to play. Everywhere she walked, whispers followed. Her and each laugh cut deeper than the one before, but she carried on her tray balanced in her left hand, her right hand bound tight in the rough splint that reminded her of pain. She could not escape. At one crowded table, a man in a pinstriped suit raised his wine glass and shouted across the room, "Hey, sweetheart, ever think about getting a real job? This work is not for you." His friends laughed loud, slapping the table while other guests joined in with cruel smiles. Anna set down the plates. She carried her face calm, her eyes steady, and she tilted her head slightly. "What is a real job, sir?" she asked, her voice soft but sharp enough to cut through the noise. The man blinked, his laughter choking in his throat. His friends looked away, pretending to be busy with their napkins, and for a moment the cruel laughter died. But the silence did not last. Paul, the manager, had been watching with growing anger. His arms crossed near the bar, his eyes burning holes into Anna, and when she walked past, he called out loud enough for everyone to hear, "Anna, we need to talk now." She stopped her tray, balanced on her trembling arm, and looked at him, her eyes tired but calm. Paul gestured sharply to her bag left near the corner chair. "I have been hearing things," he said. "People think you are faking that injury for sympathy, and now we will see the truth." Before Anna could speak, he grabbed her bag and dumped it out on a table right in front of staff and guests. A small bottle of cheap painkillers rolled. Across the table, a stack of hospital bills folded and unfolded so many times they were torn at the edges, and then a single photo slid into the light. A woman lying in a hospital bed, pale but smiling. Anna's mother. The air filled with gasps and whispers. Some guests muttered pity. Some laughed. A cruel laugh. One waiter sneered. "So she is just working for her sick mom." Pathetic. Anna stood still, her face pale. Her hand shaking so hard the tray wobbled, but she set it down slow and steady. She looked at Paul, her voice quiet but firm. "Anything else?" Sir Paul smirked, tossing the photo back onto the pile. "Just get back to work for now." The guests turned back to their meals, but the air was heavier now, the cruel laughter mixed with uneasy whispers. Anna gathered her things slowly, her fingers brushing the photo before tucking it into her pocket. Her eyes still calm, though her heart felt like it would break. She picked up her tray again and walked on her steps, deliberate, her silence louder than any words. In the corner, Richard Hale watched, his jaw tightening, his hand gripping the edge of the table until his knuckles turned white. He had seen enough humiliation to last a lifetime, yet Anna endured without shouting, without begging, without breaking. He leaned toward the manager, his voice low. "Let me see for myself, give her a test." Paul raised his eyebrows, but the cold stare of the man in gray made him obey. He smirked and called Anna over, handing her a tray stacked high with 10 cocktails, each glass a different shape and weight, the tray heavier than any she had carried that night. One-handed, he said, "Smug, let us see if you are really hurt." The restaurant froze, forks stopped in midair, conversations died, every eye turned to the girl. With one hand and the heavy tray, Anna took a deep breath, her face pale with pain, but her eyes steady. She gripped the tray with her left hand, sweat already forming on her forehead, and began to walk. Each step felt like walking through fire, her arm trembling, the glasses shaking, but she held on, her whole body moving to keep the tray balanced, her focus sharp as a blade. Guests leaned forward, waiting for the crash, waiting for the proof of weakness. But Anna did not fall. She did not spill. Not a single drop touched the floor. When she reached the corner table, she set the tray down slow and careful, her hand trembling from the effort, but her eyes steady. The room was silent, the cruel guests no longer laughing, the staff no longer smirking. Richard reached into his pocket and placed a crisp bill on the table. His voice calm and cutting enough, he said. Paul's face drained of color, his mouth opening and closing without sound as the truth began to press heavy on his shoulders. But the night was not finished. As Anna turned away, carrying her pain like a badge, a woman in a velvet dress stood blocking her path, her earrings flashing in the light. "You are making a scene." She snapped, her voice sharp as broken glass. "If you cannot handle this, why are you even here? You are ruining everyone's night." Anna stopped her tray, steady in her shaking hand, her eyes meeting the woman's, and for a long moment she said nothing. Then softly she answered, "I am just serving your dinner, ma'am." The quiet truth in her words cut deeper than any insult, and the woman stepped back, her face flushing with shame as Anna walked past her, steady, slow, silent. Richard watched every step, his fingers tapping on the table, his mind racing, for he knew this girl was not what she appeared. She was not weak, not broken. She was something rare, something powerful, something the world could not see until it was forced to. And though the guests tried to return to laughter, though the staff whispered sharper, though Paul hid behind his scowl, the truth had already begun to shift in the air, and Richard Hale knew the night was far from over. The room was still heavy with silence after Anna carried the tray of cocktails without spilling a single drop, and though her left hand trembled from the strain, her eyes had not wavered, and her steps had remained steady like a soldier marching forward through fire. The guests sat frozen, their laughter gone, their smirks fading into uneasy glances, as if they had witnessed something they could not explain. Paul, the manager, stood stiff near the bar, his jaw tight, his eyes darting nervously, between Anna and the quiet man in the corner who had spoken with calm authority. Richard Hale leaned back in his chair, his plain gray suit giving nothing away, yet his eyes sharp as knives, never leaving Anna's figure as she moved across the glittering room. He had tested workers before he had seen pride break under pressure. But this girl with one hand had passed the impossible, and something inside him told him the night was about to change. But the cruelty of the crowd had not finished. From a table near the center, a woman draped in velvet rose from her seat, her earrings catching the light like blades. She blocked Anna's path, her voice loud and cutting. "You are a distraction," she hissed. "You do not belong here. You are ruining the night. For everyone." The words echoed like a cruel command, and heads turned eager to see what the girl with one hand would do. Anna stood still, her tray balanced, her breathing shallow from the pain, yet her eyes steady as they met the woman's gaze. For a long moment the room waited. Then Anna spoke softly. "I am only here to serve your dinner, ma'am." The simple words held no anger, no shout, no plea. Yet the quiet truth in them cut deeper than any insult could. The woman stepped back, her face flushed, her sharp tongue silenced. Richard saw this too, his lips twitching into the faintest smile, his fingers tapping slowly on the table like a drumbeat of thought. He remembered his own early days in the world of work when he had been just another bus. Boy mocked by guests, scolded by managers, told he would never rise higher, and he remembered the old woman who once told him, "You do not prove them wrong by talking, you prove them wrong by showing up." Anna was showing up every second of the night. The hours dragged on, cruel voices rising again, as if refusing to let her rest. At one table, a young couple whispered loud enough for her to hear she must be desperate to keep working like that. At another table, a man with a velvet jacket sneered. "She is faking that injury. Nobody is that pathetic." The words stung like arrows, but Anna carried on her silence heavy. Her tray balanced, though her fingers trembled harder with every step. The pain crawled up her arm. Her shoulder ached. Her wrist screamed. But she did not stop in the kitchen. The staff whispered sharper still. Tommy, the busboy, leaned against the counter, smirking. "Bet she wants us to feel sorry for her." "Derek," the waiter muttered. "She makes the whole place look weak." Even Mia, the young server, who twisted her apron nervously, approached Anna, her voice shaky. "They are saying you are stealing tips, Anna. They say you use that hand for sympathy." Anna froze her hand, pausing mid-motion as she wiped down a tray. She looked at Mia, her eyes calm but tired. "Do you believe them?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Mia dropped her gaze, her hands twisting tighter, and she backed away. Silent, Anna went back to her work. Her movement slow but deliberate, her silence once again. Speaking, louder than words. Richard watched all of it from the doorway to the kitchen, his face unreadable, yet his eyes fixed on Anna with growing intensity. He had seen cruelty before, he had seen greed and arrogance, but rarely had he seen quiet dignity held, so firmly under fire. He signaled Paul again, his voice calm, but leaving no space for disobedience. "Bring me her file." Paul's face drained of color, yet he hurried to the back and returned with a thin folder. Richard flipped through the pages, scanning. Quickly, until a few words caught his attention. Sommelier Academy honorary intern, top of her class. He closed the file slowly, his mind racing as he tapped the folder against the table, remembering a story his father had once told him about a worker who had carried plates with a broken arm just to feed his family. That is the kind of person you build a business on, his father had said, and now Richard was looking at her, but Paul did not give up his grip on authority. Near closing time, he cornered Anna again, his voice sharp enough for the staff to hear. "You are damaging our reputation. Anna, you are finished. Do not come back tomorrow." The other waiters smirked. "Told you she would not last." One said, another laughed, shaking her head. "She is not strong enough." Anna clenched her fist around the strap of her splint. Her pain sharp, but her voice calm. She said nothing. She simply picked up her bag and walked toward the back door. The cold night air met her face as she stepped into the alley. her breath visible in the darkness, and for a moment she stood there alone, adjusting the cloth around her broken hand before starting to walk away. But Anna was not as alone as she thought. A delivery driver who often dropped supplies pulled up in an old dented car and leaned out the window, his voice kind, though hesitant. "I heard what happened in there. You did not deserve that," he said. "My cousin runs a diner. Good people. No fancy types, they need someone like you." He handed her a small business card wrinkled from use. Anna took it quietly, her fingers brushing the paper, and tucked it beside the photo of her mother in her pocket. She nodded once, whispered "thank you," and turned to walk into the night, behind her standing at the doorway of the restaurant. Richard watched the exchange, his hand tightening on the golden card in his pocket, his eyes fixed on Anna's figure as it disappeared into the shadows. The truth was almost ready to be revealed.